Today, I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Michelle Sebern, and I've been looking forward to this interview for days now, and I can't wait to share it with you. Michelle holds a master's degree in nursing leadership and spent 15 years dedicated to her role as a hospital-based director of surgical services, contributing her expertise to hospitals across the country. After retiring from her nursing career, Michelle joined the Peaceful Presence Project, and I've interviewed Erin and Elizabeth from that project in the past, and I'll share links for those interviews. And Michelle served as the president of their board of directors for 3 years, during which time she completed their end of life doula course. Michelle is now creating memory bears, and we're going to be talking all about that. And you can learn more at her website, thememorybearmaker.com. So, Michelle, welcome and thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Karen, for having me. It's great.
Well, I was really thrilled when you just reached out to share a little bit about the work that you're doing now. And so I hope we could start if you'll tell us a little more about your story and how you ended up as a retired nurse working with the Peaceful Presence Project and where that has led you.
Yeah. Um, right. So, yeah, I got my master's degree in nursing. And when you get your master's in nursing, if you're not a nurse practitioner, if you get like mine is in nursing leadership, you tend to be in hospitals and kind of doing the business side of things. And I do have good business acumen, but it's really brainy work. There's not much heart in it.
Mm.
And so I did that for a long time. And it's also not very creative work as much as you try to make it creative. I did love leading those teams, but it's not very creative. So when the pandemic hit, I was in between, I had been doing interim leadership work and I was in between roles. And I just kind of sat back and said, I don't really want to go back into the hospital. And I remember hiking with Erin from the Peaceful Presence Project, and I was like, what should I do? Maybe I should start a running club for kids. And, it was all over. And she said, well, we could use a little help getting started with the Peaceful Presence Project. They were just getting going, and she knew that I had a good business acumen, and I thought, let's do it. So I didn't really have any end of life experience. I mean, they don't teach you any of that in nursing school, really. And then getting your master's degree in leadership, like you get funneled right into business management. It's really nothing with end of life. Sort of education. So, anyways, started with the Peaceful Presence Project, and they needed my help, but in the meantime, they were infusing me with these ideas of end of life. And I took their end of life doula course more to sort of review the course and to see how we could formulate our elevator speech around the course and more all from a business perspective. And then I started taking this course and just was like, holy cow, there's a lot to this end of life stuff. And so it really infused me. And all of these nudges, I feel like, were sending me down this path of trying to figure out. And then in the meantime, Erin and Elizabeth do a lot of work using the compassionate communities model. And that was the
Mhm.
first time I'd really heard that concept. And so uh, I was loving my work with the Peaceful Presence Project. I ended up stepping down from their board once they were up and running and very successful. I really felt like they needed their board to sit in Bend, Oregon, where their organization is, and I don't live in Bend, sadly. So I do live in Idaho, and I thought, well, I'll step down. They are all set to be a successful organization. They have a full board in Bend, and then I'll take these ideas to Idaho with me. And so I did. I tried. I tried to take all those ideas that I had learned. And first of all, let me just say, when you spend any time with Erin and Elizabeth, you can't help yourself but go out and do good in the world. They
That,
just
I agree with that. I was going to say it's kind of a stealth initiation into into end of
yes,
life work in a way
yes,
to start out as a business oriented board member working with them, but you can't help but be inspired because their passion and their heart
yes.
and it's just infectious. And so I see why you were drawn into it.
Yeah, it's so contagious working with them. And I had never worked with Hospitals are tough. They really bring all sorts of personalities and some that are challenging to work with. I had never sat around a table with so many inspiring people as I did at the Peaceful Presence Project. And, Erin and Elizabeth just they spread that, and you just want to do good work. So thankfully, they planted that seed really for me. And yeah, so when I got back to Idaho, I thought, well, I could be an end-of-life doula. I could do Compassionate Communities Project. But when I talked about end-of-life doula work in the community that I live in, they looked at me like I had three heads.
Hmm.
And I think Bend is pretty progressive in a lot of ways. And Aaron and Elizabeth, I think, have turned the ship there. They culturally are more prepared to talk about end of life issues. They aren't afraid of it. There's enough people there now. I mean, Aaron and Elizabeth hold this end of life sort of, well, they own it's a fundraiser each year, and it's remarkable, and it grows and it grows, and people come and they want to talk about their loved ones that they've lost, or they want to talk about the work that they're doing around end of life, but it's not so everywhere in the United States.
And that's such a good point. I was just thinking, I imagine there are end of life passionate people all around the country who do live in communities as on the whole haven't awakened yet to end of life issues and are not quite ready yet for the services a doula might have to offer.
Yes, I agree. And even, things like I thought one thing I could do, there's a lot of breweries here, and I thought, well, I could do death over drafts. And I thought that was a great idea. So I talked to the brewery, and they were like, that sounds terrible. It's like, that's a total buzzkill. And so I thought, what can I do to infuse compassion into this community, which it does have. It just like you say, it just needs a little nudging. Where can I meet my community where they are? Where can I build that bridge? And I have had a long time of being a fiber artist and really loving working with fabric, and I had learned about memory bears, which are pretty popular in Australia and the UK. There are memory bear makers around the United States, but like it's a big deal in Australia. And I thought, well, let me try one. And so I just put it out on Facebook as a like, is anybody interested in this? And it was fun. People are interested in it, and it get, I had initially just a lot of widows that brought their husbands' shirts to me, and I made bears. And so that's how it all kind of started.
Wow. I have goosebumps at just this section of the conversation because I find it so powerful when we can bring our creativity in whatever area, whatever our talents are, whatever we enjoy doing, when we bring it into this arena of how do we talk to people about end of life issues, it's almost magical because you just found a way to meet the people in your community where they are
Yeah.
and touch them when you could see the great need, a need that they themselves were not aware of yet. And then you found, I guess, a safe way and a gentle and compassionate way to offer something that could really open people to conversations with you about death and dying.
Yeah, and it does feel safe. It's something tangible. And even initially, when they bring me their fabric, a lot of times they'll sort of just tell me briefly about the person who has passed, but it's really pretty superficial. And then it's when I hand them that bear and we sit down and then they just story tell. And that's what that's what the doula training is all about. That's what they're doing in Bend is all of that. But it for some reason through bears, it's like this gateway to the conversation, and it doesn't feel quite as scary. It doesn't feel woo-woo. Like a few people around end of life doulas were just kind of like, they associated it with like crystal magic and sort of witchcraft, and it's too woo-woo for them here. But the bears, they totally get.
Such a universal symbol of like
Yeah,
comfort and safety and togetherness.
yeah, yeah, it's true. And courage, it's fun to watch these widows. They're probably my favorites because um, it takes courage for them to reach out to me with I just got a shirt from somebody who was married to her husband for 58 years.
Mm.
And so it takes courage, first of all, to go through those clothes, and it takes courage to reach out to me. I'm a stranger to most of them. Um, yeah, and so I love, and then what's happening now that I've made hundreds of bears in town is, for example, one of the bears was at a celebration of life last month, and another for a widow, and another widow said, "Oh my gosh, who made the bear?" And then she reached out, and those two didn't really know each other that well, but now they both have memory bears, and they're friends through memory bears. It's like
Oh,
the whole community just like these funny little webs start with just having bears out.
that's so amazing.
Yeah,
I just love hearing that and how you found a way to begin these connections and to foster it and the storytelling that goes with it.
yeah.
Because I'm sure when they are asking you to design a bear, they want to tell you some things about their loved one that you can add special touches to the bears.
Yes. It's funny. Most of the widows bring two shirts. They bring the shirt that they remember him in, but they're always a mess. And they always go, "Oh, I don't know what he got into. The shirt is a mess. I've had to fix it, and they're apologetic for that shirt. And then they always bring the nice shirt, which he never wore. They don't really remember him in. But because I'm a stranger, they feel like they should be bringing me a clean garment.
Oh, isn't
So
that interesting?
I always pick the dirty shirt, and I always use the stains and the paint and the rips and the tears. And when I give it back to them, then their stories come out. They tell me all about what room they painted and how he tore the shirt, and yeah, story after story. And during the process while I'm making the bears, I often will write to them or call, and I want to know because I want to know more about this person also. And so I get to know their loved one while I'm making the bear. So it is really fun storytelling. And I think I think they really need that. And this community here isn't, well, I shouldn't generalize, but compared to Bend, which is also a much bigger community, um, and a lot of the people who are getting these bears aren't necessarily the kinds that are going to sit around in a grief group and share with each other. They just aren't. And so this opportunity to um, hold community space for them because they aren't necessarily going to go get it on their own, I think it's really healing for people.
Oh, I agree completely. And I was thinking about the bear being present at a memorial service or celebration of life and people seeing the shirt and maybe asking, "Oh, what was the paint here? What was that about?" I can see the stories naturally come
Yeah.
up when other people see the bear, and it just opens the door to having those tender little moments of connection and conversation that people really need.
Yes, I agree. And it's also fun to see it's in a time when things are kind of partisan. It's totally, there's no sides. Everyone is so open in this land of grief, um and the kindness that each shares. Like sometimes I'll have overlapping customers in my driveway, as one is leaving and one is coming, and they may know each other in town, and they may know that they don't share the same views, but there they are grieving they're seeing each other grieving, and it again creates that connection that I think, um, It's a bridge.
Oh, it's so true. Grief
Yeah.
really levels the playing field, and it
Yes.
is this commonality between all of us that transcends
Yeah.
all of these divisions that we create between ourselves and others.
Yes.
I wish that everyone listening could see the video. Those of you who are watching the video, you're really lucky because you get to see a little display of the bears
Yeah.
um, behind Michelle, and they're so adorable. And I want to describe a few of them. I see one that's wearing a pair of glasses. That's really sweet.
Yeah, that one's actually going to Bend next week.
Oh, that's very precious. They're all so different and so unique.
Yeah, the most popular fabric here in North Idaho is definitely flannel and plaid. I always laugh. I'm like, oh, another flannel shirt. And I think probably, the gentlemen that were wearing them, at the end of their life were comfortable in their flannel shirt around the house. And so that's what most I get the most of. Always wonder what would it be if I were in Hawaii or California or somewhere a little nicer weather.
Yeah, yeah, so true. So interesting.
That's so cool.
Some Hawaiian shirts here and there.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking if I were to have made one for my grandmother, she always wore like a house coat,
Yes,
and during the day at home when she was doing her housework and baking and things. And that's how I think of her. I think of her
yeah.
wearing her house coat.
Well, if you still have it, I would be happy to make you a bear.
Well, in fact, that brings up an issue. This is just a personal thing for me, but I have been the keeper of some of the clothing from my parents and even my grandparents, special things like I have my grandmother's wedding dress that is now 100 years old,
Yeah,
and I have my dad's World War II uniform, and I have these things that I honestly don't have space for anymore as we're downsizing. And I've been wondering, what do you do? What do people do with these things, with these items of clothing from the past? I don't know who would want this, who would cherish it, who would do something special with it. And hearing about the memory bears made me think, well, that is a way to preserve some of those memories that is it's a little bit easier to store and take along and even and see it and have it in front of me so I can memorize it and memorialize with it. And I don't know if if that's part of what you do as well is just help people preserve old memories.
absolutely. Yeah, I just did a wedding dress bear actually. Her sister had died in the 70s and this dress was hanging in her closet and she's like, I'm never gonna wear this dress. And she thought, well, perhaps she would pass it down to her daughter, but her daughter was like, Mom, I don't want this dress. And so I turned it into two memory bears and they turned out beautiful. And in fact, she got a plexiglass case for one of them and it sits on her shelf. I think, and then in that case, I think she could pass those down to her daughter and then the daughter could pass it down to her kids. Whereas, speaking from experience, my husband's mom just passed and we tried to pawn clothes off on the kids and they just don't want them. They don't, it doesn't mean as much or it's not as important to them. Whereas I think perhaps the first generation holds on to those clothes more, and then you try to pass them off to kids and grandkids, and they get kind of diluted. But yeah, in the form of a bear, it seems like it's more of a keepsake.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And these are just adorable bears. You're really talented. That's why I really want everyone to see them. And I think if they go to your website, they can see a gallery of photographs there
Yes.
to see what they look like because they're so cute, the expressions on their faces and their
Thank you. They're
ears. And,
all they're all jointed. Here, I'll pull one out here. They're all jointed, so they have little joints in them to keep their limbs, that can kind of move.
oh,
And there's a really great, she's a soft sculpture artist in Australia that makes them, and that's who I learned from. Um, but I can use any fabric, and because I back it, and so even if it's an old wedding dress or an old military. uniform, whatever it is, I can back it with fabric and make a bear. The only challenge is denim sometimes, like a Levi's jacket is a little too heavy for my sewing machine. But um, yeah, it's fun to see what people pull out of their storage to try to preserve those memories. And it really does give them hope that they don't have to throw the clothes away or that the clothes will be thrown away by their kids after they're gone, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so true. Um, do you ever tuck anything inside, like a charm or a piece of jewelry or something? Do people ever ask for that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people do even some ashes in a little
Mm.
locket. Sometimes people want to have a little satchel of something that smells like, their lavender that their grandmother used to wear. Um, what else have I put in them? I guess that's about it. I have a little note in the pocket. I always try to include a pocket with a little note that just here's the little note says, "Once my shirt, but now a bear. Hold me close and know I'm there."
Oh,
I try to put that in their little pocket. So yeah, it's fun.
it's so precious. And it looks like they each have a little heart on the bottom of the, is it left foot? No, or right?
I'm not consistent,
Oh, okay.
but there is a heart on the bottom of each foot. But yeah, I'm not consistent in which leg I grab
Which,
first.
oh, okay.
Heart. I should. It would make the photos much better.
No, no, it's really sweet. It's really precious.
Yeah, and I'll say too, sometimes people reach out to me and they say, I love this idea. My son, like an example I'll give is a gal wrote to me and said her son had died of pancreatic cancer in his 30s, and she had 5 years ago, and she hasn't been able to go through his clothes. And she said, I love this idea, but I just can't face it. And I offered to come and help pick fabric with her. And it was really eye-opening just to see how grief works in that way, and that a little nudge is all she really needed. I didn't really help with anything except stand there while she looked through the closet. And and then she just started picking it and remembering and picking clothing. And I ended up making her six bears because she was so excited. And he had many children. So she wanted to have a bear for each of his kids. But she writes to me still and tells me what a difference it made in her grief process, that she was completely stuck. In fact, she said, I'll try to go through the clothing when my husband is gone because he gets tired of seeing me cry. And I thought, right, that's exactly what people alone are experiencing with grief. They just they're they don't have enough nudge to help process, and we have to process it at some point. So I'm grateful to be part of that process when I can.
It's so true. And isn't it interesting? Our fear about how our grief might affect someone else can
Yeah.
make us hold it inside and not deal with it to make sure we don't burden anyone else.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes I think people holding on to these bears is just what they need to just put it on the bear even.
Yeah, I know you were writing about the sensory connection of, the feeling, the texture of the fabric, which it sounds like that's something that you maybe have always appreciated as a textile artist too, but just holding it, having something to hug and something close, I think that could be very comforting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, working with fabric and really for me doing any art is therapeutic. It decreases my anxiety. It helps me process the day. It helps me process any traumatic events. And so I can imagine, I haven't really experienced grief yet. I will. But I can imagine going through grief, that it's the same concept. And I really learned that from Elizabeth and Aaron. They do a lot of incorporating art workshops in some of their work so that people who are grieving can paint or do sculpture or whatever. And so I didn't really know about that using art as a therapy, but I can see that that is what's happening when um, some of these people hold on to the bear. You can see immediately that just having something to do with their hands and holding the bear is therapeutic and helpful.
It creates a space for just a
Yeah,
little grief ritual in a way
yeah.
that they feel safe with, that doesn't feel outside of their normal boundaries of what's right or how you approach things.
Yes, that's exactly right. They can snuggle that bear and it's totally acceptable within our culture. Nobody's questioning them for snuggling the bear, and secretly they're processing their grief, which is really good.
Yeah, it's so true, and a good reminder. I mean, we know that on the whole we have a grief phobic and death phobic culture, but there may be areas where that is even more entrenched and runs even deeper for people in certain areas, especially if they've lived on the land and they're hard workers and they're used to being
Yeah,
individuals who have always just kept to themselves and not complained, not told other people exactly what emotions they're feeling. How do they have never witnessed grief being openly expressed and don't really know how to show that in themselves.
yeah, that's right. And these bears seem to be acceptable to all of those sorts of people. Those that are touchy-feely and those that are not. They seem to be acceptable.
And really, what you've done by bringing the bears into your community, I think that's the essence of what a compassionate community really
Yeah.
is that we're compassionate with whatever our community needs.
Mhm.
And for you to recognize it, I mean, to have tried a few other things or have other ideas and then recognize my community isn't ready for this. I
Yeah.
have to find a doorway in to connect with people. And I just believe that you have probably already made a lot of changes and opened a lot of people up to their grief in your compassionately in your community by doing this.
I think so too, and I think that there's been bridges built in the community, and even for me personally, I around COVID, as I'm sure in many communities, it was so divisive. It just seemed like our community was really pulled apart, and I kind of went into this little bubble. Like I didn't want my bubble to be impacted by any of the community that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I think we probably all had our own defense mechanisms. But what's been fun about these bears is like it's opened me back up to the community. And it's like people are very, very generous and kind. And when you start looking at your community through, sorry, I'm going to get teary. When you start looking at your community through a different lens than trying to form a bubble around yourself, that's what compassionate community is.
Wow. Yeah, that gives me goosebumps as
And
well. And looking at the lens of grief that affects everyone,
that's right.
everyone is carrying that. And when we can see it, how do we not feel bonded to
Yeah.
every other person because of carrying that pain together, the pain of being human and being mortal?
Yes. And it was the work of Francis Weller. Do you read Francis?
Yes, yes.
So the whole time well, not the whole time, but much of the time with the Peaceful Presence Project, I kind of felt a little bit like an imposter because I hadn't lost anybody close to me. And so I hadn't really experienced that kind of grief and I hadn't experienced death really. And I didn't have my own story, but then I read Francis Weller and I was like, oh yeah, we all have grief. We all have loss. It doesn't have to be the loss or the death of a person, but we all have grief. And so that's what I am seeing in my community is people come to me with the bears, but there's a lot of grief and a lot of bridges being built that I think this probably every community needs.
Mm. Oh, that is so sweet. I was just remembering when I think it was when my daughter was 3, we had for her birthday, we had a teddy bear tea party, and everyone who came to the tea party brought
Yeah.
their teddy bears, and we sat them around the table. And I was just thinking, how interesting would it be to have a teddy bear meetup group where everyone brings their bear and it ends up
Yeah.
being a grief support group in the end, but no one sees it that way. Everyone thinks I'm going to go
Show my bear.
show my bear, and we're gonna look at each other's bears and share those stories.
I thought the same thing this summer is sending an email to every person that got a bear and just saying, we're going to do a bear photo project or something at the park. Because 100 people could show up with their bears, and I just wanted to see what would happen. It is kind of a fun human experiment with
Yeah, it really
just
is.
see, how far can I stretch this community and with their bear.
Exactly. And this is such a unique and creative approach. That's what like it touches my heart, and it just kind of blows me away at what you've been able to do. And I want to commend you because I know that you don't charge for making these bears, which is remarkable to me. Your generosity of spirit and time and offering your talent. I mean, people make donations, but that you're willing to you see such value in it that you don't charge for it. And I don't know how you're able to do that.
Probably the same way you are.
I guess that's probably true.
But yeah, it gives me back a lot of both emotional support and the community is generous in so many ways. And watching the lives of people, touching the lives of people really is what feeds it for me. Listening to their stories. But yeah, I try to make about a bear every other day. So I've gotten it down pretty good. And then the other thing though that has been really fortunate is a lot of people want to help with the bear project. And so um, like for example, I just had a good friend learn she wanted 16 bears for her family. So I taught her how, and she made 16 memory bears for her immediate family. And now we just got contacted by our local hospice group. They're going to hold a kids camp this summer in June. Each of the children who are attending the camp have lost probably a parent or someone close to them. And so they asked if I could make a memory bear for each child before the camp. If I was alone, I may not be able to because I wouldn't have the bandwidth. But now I have a few sewers in town, including this woman, Lorna, who sewed all the bears for her family. She's gonna just sew half the bears and we're just gonna take
Oh,
care of it. So
wow.
that's the other cool thing is that it's created a lot of community that way and that people want to do more.
Oh, and what an amazing gift for a child who's grieving.
Yeah,
That is really beautiful. I was going to ask that if people ever commission a bear for someone else who's grieving as a gift for them and a way of supporting them.
they do. I have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes I get requests like, somebody's lost their dad and they want bears for all the grandkids. And I have to sometimes be careful about making committing to too many gifting to the generations below because I don't have the bandwidth for it. But as this grows, we could have the bandwidth. Right now, I have four sewers in town that want to make more bears, and sometimes we don't have I don't have enough bears to share. I keep all of the clothes to myself and I don't give it to the other sewers. So they're always excited when I need help. So I think the more the better for now.
Oh, and that's another fabulous way of just spreading information about
Yeah.
grief and end of life to have more sewers and even who come together and you know
Yeah.
they're also hearing the stories and they're also getting I think the gratification in a way of seeing how much they can make a difference for
Yeah.
another person.
Yes, I think so. And it makes me think about your listeners in that, there could be really great sewers listening and think, oh, I want to learn that. So could you link the Australian artist? Her name is Lisa Paye, Paye. And it's a free YouTube. and it tells you exactly how to make the memory bears. It's an hour long. So if there's any sewers on here that feel inspired to do the same for their own community, then they could.
Oh, I would be happy. I will link to that in the show notes so people,
Great.
I'm sure there are people who love to sew who are thinking, wow. And I also want to encourage, I know many people have been inspired to get end of life doula training, but they might be meeting obstacles as you are of being in a community where people are not quite ready for all the ways a doula could help them or benefit them.
Yeah.
But to be inspired by your experience, when you use your talents, use your creativity, think of some unique way that you could open the door in your community.
Yeah. And that end of life doula course through the Peaceful Presence Project, it every single hour of that course inspires creativity. And so even if people are reluctant about thinking about the end result of them being an end of life doula, they may discover a lot of doors along the way in that training because it is so inspiring and creative the entire time. They've done a really good job with that training. So I encourage people to take that one, or I'm sure there are many that are really good, but yeah, it's a door opener.
And I'll make sure did you take the training in person because you were close
I
by, or
didn't.
did you
I did it online.
online? Okay.
Mhm. They
Oh, so
have a
that,
self-paced module that you can do, and then they also do a cohort quarterly, or at least that's how it was when I was with the organization. So you can do it in person, but the I did the self-paced, and I liked that because I could go back and review things for the for a year afterwards. So
yeah, I like that idea too because it just can flow more naturally with your day-to-day schedule
yeah,
and what you're doing.
yes, yeah, exactly.
So you're pretty busy with bears, making a bear every other day.
Yeah. Yeah, we I like to travel too, so we've gotten it down where we haul my sewing machine and all the stuff to wherever we're going. But we just got back from Arizona and we had flown there and I fell behind because we were gone for nearly 2 weeks and I said I don't want to go on an airplane again because I couldn't bring my sewing machine. So we'll travel with the sewing machine for now because it's an important part of my day too, I realized. Like we would go for a hike and then I would be twiddling my thumbs on this Arizona trip, which was beautiful, but I missed doing my bears and every afternoon.
Uh, and that it's a natural fit. It sounds like it's it's a project for your own creativity that feeds a need for you to be making something and something that makes a difference and is meaningful.
Yeah, it really does. And it seems like the more that it spreads, the more people are thinking about it. When I first got started, it seemed like people were kind of going to their storage units to get clothes. But now, people, when someone passes, well, and also I have bear displays at all the funeral homes, which helps. But now when someone passes, they know of the memory bears. And so they're thinking about when they're cleaning out their mom's closet grab the nightgown or grab the robe or whatever because that's what they remember them in, which I love that just in time kind of estate cleaning, where it's very thoughtful.
I love that too. And I was thinking of the symbolism instead of stuffing everything, including all the grief, away
Yeah,
in a locked storage cabinet.
yeah,
They're already planning how to bring this out in the open and keep it there and have
that's
it
right.
in within their sight and their vision. Like that just seems like such a healthy process for grief.
Yeah, I think so. And may I share one story? My
Oh,
favorite
please
story
do. Yeah.
was a man who was on hospice here and in October, and he knew of the memory bears and had us make a bear. In his honor for his wife. And so she didn't know about it. And he passed, and then we gifted it to her in December for Christmas. And so, first of all, he loved the idea because, he had control. He was very holistic uh, at the end of his life. Not everyone has the ability to dot every I the way he did, but he was able to pick out the shirt that was going to be just right. It was one that he wore every Friday night for date night, and he just loved that that was gonna. He was tickled pink that that was going to be a Christmas gift to her after he was gone. He just loved that. And so, and it tickled her too. She got that gift and she couldn't believe it. She didn't know anything about it. And so when we showed up with that bear, so that's where I'd love to get to is all of us, right? Thinking like at the end of our life, all the things that we want to include in our end of life plan, including what shirt on your bear.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's truly meaning making and
Yeah,
legacy leaving to
legacy.
do something. And part of our advanced care planning that is so
Totally.
sweet to think after I'm gone,
Yeah,
months later, what
yeah.
will happen and is there something to be left for those around me? And what a sweet, simple thing.
Very
Simple that
simple.
it doesn't, it's not complicated. The love is just obvious when you
Yeah,
look at the bear.
yeah, yeah. That's great.
Oh, that's an amazing story. And I was thinking, interacting with people in hospice before they die, like that's really a powerful way to listen to their end of life stories and help them in a way with their planning at the end of life. And when this becomes even more of a trend and people accept it and it's kind of what you do in your community is that you plan ahead and think what shirt your bear will wear.
Right.
That is a huge advancement to suddenly have people thinking in advance about when I die and how I want things to be.
Yeah.
And what a remarkable transformation you're making for your community members.
And to have it okay to think about those things, it doesn't mean that we're signing up to die. It's just we're just thinking about it. And so,
We're just
yeah,
thinking about a bear.
exactly. Yeah, it's been fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, that is really exciting. And I know you wrote about kind of the magic moment of handing over the bear that you've made for someone. So you've already heard their story about the fabric and you've been crafting it and seeing what it's becoming and they haven't seen it yet. And
Yeah.
talk about what that's like for you.
Oh, it's always a hug. You know, the bears are often in these sitting positions like they are behind me. And so I usually hand it to the recipient like that, and they just hold that bear. It's really, really touching. And lots of tears and lots of yeah, lots of hugging. And you can tell it's a release, I think, for most of them. You know, even if they lost their person a long time ago, 10 years, there's still a release there that happens. Right, and sometimes it happens in my driveway. Like sometimes I won't make them come in, especially if they're elder. And so I'll just bring the bear out into my driveway and it's the same. A big hug, this big emotional release right out in the open with me who's a stranger. I mean, by now I'm not really a stranger because I've been making their bear and hearing their story, but still, it is really touching to watch. And I think it's what people need.
Yeah. Have you ever been able to see some of your bears out in the world, like to spot one on someone's shelf or to see
Yeah.
it somewhere else?
Well, I went to a potluck, and a gal was showing pictures to somebody else and it was a bear of her friend's house and it was a bear on her mantle. So it does and I said, oh, I made that bear, and they're like, you're the memory bear maker. You know, it's getting kind of um, more known in town, I should say. But and then I do get pictures like I told you about the plexiglass on her shelf, and they do share stories. You know, there's a lot of stories with the bears going home with people, like because they pick up the bear and then oftentimes they put him in the passenger seat. And so then I get stories about the bears either looking at the lake on the way home or trying to eat their sushi on the way home, or you know, just fun stories that people share with me about their bears.
Yeah, I could imagine the bear could become kind of a companion,
Yeah,
a substitute companion in a way that embodies the loved
yeah,
one and someone to talk to and
yeah.
share stories and memories with.
I think so. That one of my favorite bears was a widow brought her husband's shirt. They'd been married for, I think, 40 years, and his late wife had made the shirt. So all this love, and here I am making a bear out of the shirt.
Oh,
Three
wow.
women came together through this one shirt, and then for him, in honor of him, which I thought was really, I love that too.
Oh, wow. I love that too. Oh, such beautiful stories that you
Yeah,
have.
thanks. I
And
love it.
when I think about in the hospice work that I've done, like we worked so hard to get people to share with us these moments and these stories that they have. And it seems to me that the bear just makes it so much easier. Like it just opens the door in a way that sitting down with someone and asking them a question
Yeah.
can't do.
Right. Sometimes there's not really even much eye contact. They're kind of looking at the bear and telling me this story while holding on to the bear. Yeah, it really disarms people. It just, uh, um, yeah, it just almost makes them forget that they're even uncomfortable about the situation. They just feel free to just story tell. Which,
Hmm.
yeah, I didn't know that was going to happen, but it is pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine other kinds of creations like wall hangings, tapestries, pillows, things like that. There are other things people who may not have the sewing skills to make a bear
Yeah.
could maybe make something even even simpler. But the bear because it harkens back to just childhood memories and those very the special comfort
Yeah.
of having a stuffed animal friend. I think the
Yeah.
the bear seems to have this special power.
Yeah, I think so too. And they really do each take on a personality where I do think you could preserve memories in a pillow in the form of a pillow or a wall hanging or a quilt. I know that sometimes people do quilts, but I love the bears because they really take on their own personality. I mean, some of them sometimes their legs won't stay up, kind of floppy leg, or sometimes their smile is a little smirky and people will comment, oh, he had a smirky smile, or things like that. So I often think that the bears do take on a little personality of their person.
Yeah, without you even knowing it.
Without me knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, how great to get that feedback later on. It would be so fun for you to hear the after stories of all the people who've lived with bears for a while and have
Yeah.
them tell you the adventure of their bears
Right. Right.
and
I
and
know, I
how
thought it'd be a fun documentary.
yeah, I just love it. Um, well, as I said, I've been looking forward to this interview so much because I find it so delightful and I'm so thrilled with the way that you've met your community where they are and brought all your best talents and skills. And that is something to ask as a nurse. Do you feel having a background as a nurse is helpful to you in doing this work? I know you didn't get specific training around end of life, but I just wonder if nursing gave you any tools or skills that are useful for you in this part of your life.
Only that they know that I'm a nurse, and uh, it seems to lend itself to people sharing even more than they would have otherwise,
Mm,
more even about a hospital experience um, or even sometimes they even just share their day to day with me if they're having an ailment. So I think that people knowing that I'm a nurse, and so there I am as a listener through the bears, but then I also have my nurse hat on because they know I'm a nurse, and um, oftentimes they want to share health things or yeah, things that nurses would want to listen to, which is just fine.
yeah.
And it does. I do sometimes have a lens that I'm looking to see if people are doing okay. Are they? Because grief also, I think people can isolate and not take care of themselves. And so sometimes I have that lens on as well.
Mm. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in a unique situation
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
An artist who's a nurse and and
Yeah.
trained as a doula. That's really wonderful.
Oh, I feel so grateful to have all of those things. Yeah. And I think you really, you kind of end up being whatever it is you're doing every single day. And so when I was in nursing leadership in a hospital, I wouldn't have had the ability to be creative. It wasn't what I was doing every single day. And so it kind of had to go like this. And that now it feels like I've landed in a nice place where I can massage all three of my things together.
That's really wonderful. All
Yeah.
of your life experience and your knowledge and wisdom and creativity
That's
all
right.
coming together
Yeah.
to this place. And it's such a blessing to your community. And I hope this interview and our conversation is an inspiration to people listening. I always imagine that there are people out there who are thinking, I could do that. I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
And people who might have been discouraged because they're living in a community like you are that isn't ready for exactly what they thought they'd be offering, but maybe there's another way in. Maybe there's something else they could do
That's
if they start to think creatively.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to help anybody who wants to get started on their own bears, help
And
them get started.
can people reach out to you through the website?
They
Through
can. Yeah, I have a form on there, email, my phone number is on there. I mean, really reach out how for either a bear or if people want to start their own bear project, I'd be happy to help point them in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's thememorybearmaker.com, right?
That's
Is that
right.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I'd love to see. I hope people reach out to you, but don't overwhelm you with too many bear orders or too many
Yeah,
requests, just the right amount.
just the right
And
amount. I've got
then
help.
maybe we'll spread the word one bear at a time. And I appreciate you so much for talking with me today, but especially for just making a difference the way you are in your community.
Oh, thanks, Karen. I feel the same way about you.
Well, we'll be in touch because I'll talk to you about
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
about a future bear
Good. I'm so glad.
that I may need.
Good.
And thank you once again, Michelle. It's been delightful to talk to you.
Okay, take care.